Hey everyone, and welcome. So today, we're going to talk about a really cool theory that explains something I think we've all felt. Why does our world seem to be getting faster and more fragile at the exact same time? It's called Coherence Latency Theory, and honestly, it might just be a hidden law that governs the stability of, well, everything.
So let's just start with the big question, right? Why do our systems, our tech, our economy, even our conversations online, why do they seem to just fall apart when we try to speed them up? We're always chasing more efficiency, more instant feedback, but a lot of the time we just end up with total chaos. What if that's not a bug? What if it's a fundamental feature of how reality works?
And this isn't just some abstract idea. We see this crisis of accelerated feedback playing out all around us. I mean, think about stock market flash crashes, where algorithms react so fast that no human can keep up. Or, the way a social media mob can spin up into a frenzy in like minutes. Even our most advanced AIs, these neural networks, can become unstable. It's the same story everywhere. We push for more speed, and we risk everything breaking.
Okay, so this brings us to a pretty radical idea. Coherence Latency Theory, or CLT for short. The theory basically says that these breakdowns, they aren't just little technical glitches that we can patch or tune away. No, they happen because we're violating a fundamental law of physics, one that's as real and as unavoidable as gravity.
Now, this is the real mind-bending part. Instead of looking at stability as, a simple software problem or an engineering issue, CLT says, nope, think bigger. It treats stability as a thermodynamic constraint. It's suggesting that for any system to stay in one piece, it has to manage its information and its energy within certain physical limits. Kind of like an old-school steam engine. Push it too hard and it'll blow. To make this super intuitive, the theory gives us this brilliant idea of informational temperature. Just think of a system's reaction speed as its heat. So a system with almost zero delay, one that reacts instantly to everything, is informationally hot. It's jittery, it's frenetic, and it's just begging for chaos. But a system with more delay, well, that one's colder. It's calmer, maybe a bit sluggish, but way more stable. So, this whole theory is really built on a fundamental trade-off, this constant balancing act. On one side, you've got speed, and on the other, you've got stability. So let's break down these two key ingredients, coherence and latency.
First up, we've got latency. This is pretty simple. It's just a system's built-in delay. You can think of it as its thinking time, right? It's that little pause it takes to process information and figure out what to do next before it reacts. It's the lag on a video call, or the time it takes the company to restock its shelves.
And on the other side of the scale, we have coherence. This is basically a measure of the system's focus, its order, its ability to hold itself together. A system with high coherence is stable, it's efficient, it makes sense. Think of it like a perfectly clear radio signal coming in. Low coherence, on the other hand, is just noise and static. The system is chaotic and falling apart.
And this right here shows you the central trade-off perfectly. Look, if you lower the latency to make a system super fast, you make it hotter, right? And what happens? It loses coherence and becomes prone to chaos. But if you increase the latency, you make it colder. Sure, it might be a little slow to adapt, but it has the potential for much, much higher coherence and stability. The key is you can't have it both ways. You can't maximize both at the same time.
In fact, the research shows there's a universal law at play here. As a system's delay, its latency, gets closer and closer to zero, its coherence doesn't just go down a little bit, it completely collapses. It falls off a cliff. Pushing for infinite speed doesn't get you infinite performance, it gets you total catastrophic instability. There's a tipping point where the whole thing just breaks.
So if that's the risk, how do stable systems actually manage to survive? Well, the theory gives us something like a recipe for resilience. It describes it as a delicate balance between four fundamental forces that are always pushing and pulling against each other.
Okay, let's break this down. At any given moment, a system is under feedback pressure. That's the stress from the outside world trying to push it into chaos. Now, to fight back, it has three tools in its toolbox. First, restorative adaptation. That's its ability to learn and heal itself. Second, dissipative degradation, which is just a fancy way of saying natural wear and tear that kind of slows things down and lets off steam. And finally, there's corrective flux, which is the flow of good information that helps it find its way back to balance. Real stability is this constant, dynamic dance between all four of these.
And here, this is where it gets really, really interesting. The theory takes these concepts from hard physics and connects them to something that feels almost like
an ethical principle, a guide for how systems and maybe even how we should operate.
This shows you just how big a shift in thinking this is. See, the classical way of looking at things sees this as just an optimization problem. The biggest risk of going too fast is that you might just be slow to get to the right answer. You're inefficient. But the CLT approach, it reframes the whole thing as a thermodynamic system. And here, the stakes are so much higher. The failure mode isn't just being a bit slow, it's catastrophic rupture and collapse. The system doesn't just get it wrong, it literally breaks into pieces.
And it all boils down to this incredibly elegant, almost moral equation. It says that a system's patience, that's its built-in delay, multiplied by its internal geometry, its structure and its order, that number must be greater than or equal to the external chaos and forcing, all the pressure being put on it. If that balance gets broken, the system will collapse, period. This means that things like smoothness, kindness, cooperation, they aren't just nice-to-have ideas. They are physical requirements for a system to survive.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What's the lesson? Well, it's a powerful argument for something we've kind of forgotten, the wisdom of delay. In our nonstop rush for speed and efficiency, we've forgotten that real resilience doesn't come from reacting faster. It comes from having the patience to react wisely.
So let's just recap what this incredible theory really teaches us. First, that true, lasting resilience absolutely requires that built-in thinking time. Second, that the fastest system is almost always the most fragile one. Third, that real stability happens when a system has enough slack to absorb shocks without freaking out and overreacting. And, I think most beautifully, it frames smoothness, the ability to be kind, to cooperate, not as a fuzzy, feel-good choice, but as a physical necessity for holding things together.
And that really just leaves us with one final, crucial question to think about. In a world that is screaming for instant answers, instant results, and instant reactions, where can we, in our technology, in our companies, in our own lives, where can we consciously build in the patience that's required to actually cohere?